Hello and welcome to another episode of KCC Revision. My name is Edwin Nyongesa. Remember, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. Hit the subscription button, comment, share, and like. Today, I want us to look at English Paper 2, a very, very important paper, the longest of the three. And English Paper 2 is called Comprehension, Literary Appreciation, and Grammar. So how does it look like? What is the structure of English Paper 2? Now, English Paper 2 is divided into 4 sections. And learners are advised to treat every section with the seriousness that it deserves. Now, these sections include number 1 or question 1, which is a comprehension, also called a passage or an unseen text. Now, remember, a comprehension tests on your ability to understand and respond to subsequent questions that will be asked from the passage. A comprehension is it requires the candidate to have exposed themselves to a wide variety of literature or literatures from around the world on all manner of subjects, particularly subjects on the environment, on poverty, on good governance, on corruption, ICT, culture, media, morality, peace, what have you, all those. So you're supposed to expose yourself as a student, you're supposed to expose yourself to a variety of passages, read widely. Now, the first question is typically factual, and it requires you to recall the answer from the first paragraph or the initial paragraphs, and then you're supposed to link the lifted phrase to the question. Whatever you are lifting from the comprehension, link it to the question so that you can score. So for you to score for the first question, you're supposed to diligently peruse the initial paragraphs and you will find the answer. So remember, if they ask you any grammar question in this section, handle it with extreme caution, because any fraction you are going to score 0. So in case of a grammar question, maybe you're supposed to add a question tag, begin with a comma, small letter, end in a question mark. So any infraction, you are going to score 0 in this particular section. Also, you are supposed to spell words from the passage correctly. For example, there was a comprehension on greenhouse. Remember, greenhouse is separated by a hyphen, is hyphenated. So for students who wrote their answer as greenhouse, separated, greenhouse, they were not scoring because they are changing the meaning of the sentence in which it appears. And then also do not instruct the examiner to find the answer elsewhere. And also do not give multiple answers on the same. In a comprehension, you can also be asked to give the attitude. Remember, attitude has to do with the perception of the author, their views, what they feel about what they're writing. If it's about environmental conservation, garbage disposal, for instance, look at how you respond to that. Maybe the author is critical, satirical, pessimistic, ironic, optimistic, all have you. So if they ask you a question on attitude, please do not leave a blank space. Also, you have to learn something about comprehension skills. This, of course, will include summary writing, know how to write a good summary. Also, note making. I will find time and go through all of them. So, note making, when you're told to make notes, please highlight. Do not write in continuous prose because you'll be penalized for the same. So, highlight by means of highlighting, highlight those points. There are many ways you can make notes. So when they ask you to make notes, please make notes. You can be told to paraphrase. Paraphrasing means you are writing your own words according to how you have understood and so on. Now, another question, of course, would be meaning of words, inference. So when you're told to give the meaning of a word, maintain the tense of the word. If the word is a verb, maintain the tense of that word. If it's past tense, meaning should also reflect past tense. Maintain the word class or the part of speech of the word. So how do you get the meaning? By looking at the context. Words that appear before and after the phrase or the word that you're supposed to give the meaning. So you use those words to get a hint of its meaning. So always endeavor to score highly in this particular section on comprehension. Now question 2 is literary appreciation, where you'll do an extract from, for the year 2024, you are going to do an excerpt from Fathers of Nations. And you need to have understood the novel very well for the year 2024. You need to have understood Fathers of Nations in terms of the episodic happenings, the plot. You should be able to recall the plot, how one event leads to yet another event. We call that plot. So know how, just understand the notable key events that are happening in this particular novel. Now, the first question usually tests on recall of the plot. Are you able to recall the plot? So you are supposed to read and master the compulsory set text very well, so that you can place the excerpt in its immediate context. Placing an excerpt in its immediate context means you say briefly what happens before and briefly what happens after. But you are supposed to give notable events, only give notable events, not very far away from the excerpt. Must be not very far away from the excerpt. If they ask you a question on attitude, identify the attitude using an adjective or a descriptive noun. You can also be asked to give the character traits of characters. Use an adjective. Use an adjective to describe someone, their trait. Identify and illustrate. Remember, identification must always be followed by illustration. Can also be asked to give thematic concerns. You're supposed to give thematic concerns. When I told to give a theme, please look at the excerpt. Do not force a theme from your classroom not into the excerpt. So you must be limited. You must limit your answers to the excerpt. So correctly identifying the attitude, character trait, or theme scores independent of whether there is an illustration or not. But remember, illustration without identification will score 0. But for you to score, make sure that illustration, identification is accompanied by illustration. Avoid spelling mistakes, as I said. Avoid mischaracterization. That is when you give wrong character. You call Mosi as Mose. That is mischaracterization. And also remember to use adjectives, as I said, in characterization. If a character is intelligent, don't write clever because it's unacceptable. And then you should not use the negative marker not when you are giving your traits. You should not say someone is not enthusiastic. Instead, you should say someone is unenthusiastic. Say what they are instead. Make sure that you identify literary devices. You can be asked to identify figures of speech, including metaphors, similes, personification, symbolism, idiomatic expressions, and what have you. Unless expressly required to do so, avoid going out of the excerpt for your responses. Also, avoid forcing traits, themes, style from your classroom notes into the extract. Remember, you can also be told to summarize or to make notes on the same. So please bear that into consideration. Now, question 3, section 3 is poetry. Paper 2 poetry. This is not like oral poetry. This is paper 2 poetry, which is quite approachable. I will also find time to go through poetry, paper 2 poetry. And if it's not a poem, for this year we are of course expecting that they'll test poetry or a song. And remember, if it's not a song or a poem, they'll test an oral narrative. But this year we are anticipating a poem. So if it's a poem, then a poem you have to give the meaning of a poem. Maybe they ask you the meaning of the poem. What is the poem all about? Know something about poetic devices or style, poetic style are used. Know something about tone, mood, and attitude. Basically, understand the poem before you respond to it. If you are told about meaning, for instance, do not go for complex metaphorical meaning. Just give what you understand from the poem. We will have a session on poetry because poetry is quite long, and I'm just doing a highlight of English paper 2. Learn something about mood, tone, and attitude, and you'll be good to go. No words that are used to describe tone and so on. So that is poetry. Remember, we'll have a session on poetry on their own. And then the last question is grammar. Grammar, remember grammar, rules embedded in a language. Grammar are those rules of the language. Spelling, all that, use of prepositions, pronouns, subject-verb agreement, use of conjunctions, correlative conjunctions, word derivation, euphemism, and synonyms, antonyms, all that, ambiguity, and what have you. So all that will be asked under grammar. There are many, many rules of grammar: passive voice, active voice, phrasal verbs usage and meaning, idiomatic expressions and their meaning, direct speech, indirect speech. There are many, many aspects of grammar that you need to understand. And remember, grammar is 15 marks. So comprehension, 20 marks. Exerpt, 25 marks. And then poetry, 20 marks. And then grammar, 15 marks. So understand all those. Understand the use of the participle, the possessive, adjectival quantifiers, inversions, euphemism, gender-sensitive language, synonyms, homographs, word derivations, and so on and so forth. So understand all those, and then you'll be good to go as far as grammar is concerned. So that is English paper 2. Always endeavor to score highly in this paper to actualize your journey of scoring an A. So that is it for English paper 2 structure. Remember, if you like the content and wish to support us, hit the subscription button, like, comment, and share for more. Until next time, it is bye-bye from me.